Let me now bring up tonight's guest. He is the president of InfraReady Products, Mr. Mark Pickard.
Thank you, Jason.
So we know that you did grow up in southern Saskatchewan, and you were born on a farm?
No, I was actually born in a hospital.
Okay.
Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan.
Moose Jaw, right.
I grew up in a small town called Crane Valley, which is sort of halfway between Moose Jaw and Willabunch. Graduating class, total 12 students.
12 students, wow. So was your, you worked on the farm as a child? Do you have brothers, sisters, big family?
No, it was a small family. We had a mixed farm, cattle and agriculture. And I have one brother who sort of leaned towards the agriculture, or to the animal agriculture side, became a veterinarian. And I kind of leaned towards the crop side and sort of followed that route.
And is the family farm still in existence today?
It's actually being farmed by one of my cousins, so
Okay.
it's sort of indirectly in the family.
Indirectly. So was your plan to come back to the farm, or what happened after you came to Saskatoon to go to the U of S and continue your studies? And was that plan to go back to the farm, or?
Not really. Our parents really encouraged us to get a good education, and they didn't really encourage us to farm, although I did have a quarter section of farmland, which I farmed with my father. He did most of the work, and I kind of helped cash the checks, but
There were checks?
there were a few. There was one, I think. But I sold the land to Ducks Unlimited because it was a great habitat for wildlife. It was kind of hilly, rolling land, and not really the best agricultural land in the province, so I think it's found a higher purpose.
So you came to Saskatoon, and your undergrad was in?
Yeah, I came, to university, and first year didn't really know what I wanted to do. Second year, I kind of found myself gravitating towards agriculture, and I did a degree in applied microbiology and food science, which sort of led to a career in food science.
And from there, did you go right into your MBA, or?
No, actually, I was working for a local food company called CSP Foods, and they were an agricultural company, a subsidiary of the Saskatchewan wheat pool that milled flour and processed canola. And their flour mill is still one of the ones that was originally built on 33rd Street, and now a P&H flour mill, but kind of began my career in canola processing and flour milling.
And so you worked for a few years and then returned to your studies, or what was that?
No, actually it was sort of continuous. I think about my career, and I started work in 1978, and I really haven't had a moment of unemployment. But I did my MBA while I was working full-time, and that sort of took a little longer than most, but it was worthwhile because I was able to apply a lot of what I was learning to the actual work situation, and benefited a lot from that.
Well, Jason's going to step in pretty quickly to lead up to the story of InfraReady, but I'm sure there's lots of kids here that grew up on the farm or in rural Saskatchewan. Any big lessons from your upbringing that has impacted you in your business today that you'd like to share?
I would say that people of Saskatchewan are sort of known for their work ethic. And you see that the more you travel and you come back and you see what we're able to accomplish with a small population here and the great things that have come from Saskatchewan. And I think that's really attributed to that prairie work ethic.
Thank you. Jason, over to you.
Okay, well, let's just start with InfraReady Products. Tell us, because I'm sure a lot of people here don't know what and who InfraReady Products is.
Well, as the name suggests, we use infrared cooking technology to make products ready or more convenient. And infrared energy is an energy that is found from sunlight. Sunlight is 58% infrared energy. So when you're standing outside and you're getting warm, you're actually absorbing infrared energy. But what we do is create infrared energy using a natural gas burner, and it allows us to pre-cook the grain. So we're an industrial food ingredient supplier. We've been in business since 1994, and the company had sort of an interesting beginning, sort of as a transformational innovation of a large grain company, the Saskatchewan Wheat Pool. And I was working for them at the time as head of processing research, and we were looking for ways to add value to the local crops. And one of the conclusions was that everything has to be cooked in some form before we can consume it. So we started focusing on different types of cooking technology, which led to me writing a business plan for the wheat pool. And I remember that day. Yeah, I remember having this fairly well-detailed business plan. With a freshly minted MBA, you think you got the content right. And I presented it to the then CEO of the Saskatchewan Wheat Pool, a very astute accountant by the name of Milt Fair. And after the presentation, and he'd gone through and looked at everything, he only had one question. And it was, who's going to lead this? And I looked him in the eye and I said, I would. And he said, okay, I'll give you the money. And it wasn't until years later that I kind of realized it wasn't the amazing job I did on the business plan, but rather that I was prepared to invest my social capital in seeing it to completion. And I think he knew that when he said, you have the go-ahead.
Okay, so that was back in '94, you said. Walk us through the first few years and maybe the struggles or early successes and how that went for you.
Sure. In 1994, we started with 3 employees, no products, and no customers. And it was uphill from there, but we had a business plan. We had a plan.
What's your first product?
Well, the first products went into the baking industry. It was sort of low-hanging fruit, items like rye that goes into rye bread, or wheat flakes that go into various products. A lot of the products were quite simple, but then the early stages we enlisted a lot of help from universities to help us to understand the effects we were creating in using infrared cooking, and that led to quicker cooking time products and other products that we were able to introduce. And by about 1997, the Saskatchewan Wheat Pool had changed a lot as a company. It was becoming publicly traded, and we were a small rounding error difference for them, and I was given the opportunity to buy the company in 1998.
Was that, at the time, was that a no-brainer for you, or was that a pretty high-risk decision?
Well, it was a real crossroads for me. I had invested a lot of social capital into the business, and I wanted to see it succeed. And actually, when they told me that they were either going to sell it or close it, it kind of made me mad at first. But then I realized it was actually an opportunity. So with the help of one partner who was on the supply side of the business and some venture capital, I was able to buy the company from the Wheat Pool in 1998.
And that partner, again, you said wasn't from Canada, right?
Well, actually, my first partner is a gentleman from Nacum, Saskatchewan. His name is Bill Hetland. And Hetland Seeds was an early supplier to us of seed, or of grains for our processing facility. So he saw the advantage of being an investor from the supply side. The venture capital people, they were very helpful to get us started. But by the time they left, their money was costing us about 18% per year. So they had to go. And
did you give them a card?
Well, I started looking into our supply chain, and we had a customer that was interested in investing. So with that investment from that customer, we were able to redeem the venture capital, and I gained a third partner. So we're sort of the three amigos now. And he's in the food ingredient distribution business in Singapore.
Okay, so the third partner came on about what year?
About 2004.
2004. Okay, so it's been 3 since 2004. And I guess meetings are a little tough when him being in Singapore. What's the angle there? Give us a little background on why the guy from Singapore.
Well, he had sort of a similar genesis to his company. He bought it from a large grain company, saw the opportunity, and it became sort of a beachhead for us in Southeast Asia. So he has offices in Thailand, Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, Manila. So through him, we have that great outreach into that region of the world.
And is that, would you say, the thing that really sprung and launched InfraReady, or were you already doing fairly well, and that's just an expansion?
I think that's more of just an expansion. We've had a history of having very large blue chip companies as our customers, and we've been able to sort of hang on to their shirt tails and grow with them. But some of them had very innocent beginnings that grew into significant business. And I recall being at a trade show in about 1996 in New Orleans. And at last hour of the trade show, I was approached by a product developer from the Gerber baby food company. And they asked us, do we know anything about wild rice? And we'd been making a pre-cooked wild rice. And they decided to use it as one of their first ingredients for organic baby food. And then that led to other ingredients for what now is Nestle, which owns that line. But we've been a supplier into the baby food industry since about 1998.
So I was going to ask you how you marketed yourselves, but I guess you sort of answered that with you were pounding the pavement, going to trade shows and getting the name out and telling people what you guys could provide them. Is that basically what it was?
Yeah, that's part of it. I think there's sort of there's two things that kind of go on for food companies. One is to obtain some accreditation, to be recognized as an equal with your peers in the food industry. And we sought that fairly early in the history of the company. But then, accreditation is a process, and if you're good at process, you can become accredited. But the success with a lot of companies is actually based on our credibility, and that's the ability to be responsible, reliable, and secure supplier to them.
Well, and you touched on the baby food industry, but you've got lots of different products here in all different industries, from kitty litter to alcohol to cereal to pasta. So I don't know if you want to touch on some of the stories of some of these different products for us.
Oh, sure. We're sort of a firm believer of diverse products to diverse markets. And so that led to, searching out customers across the food industry. For example, we sell ingredients to the breakfast food industry. And most recently, we're approved as a supplier to Kellogg's and have an ingredient in their cashew breakfast cereal, which is a protein-based product, and it seems to be doing fairly well. It was in the Saskatchewan market for a short time. Hopefully it'll return soon. But it extends to companies like Canada Bread as well, where we sell ingredients to large bread manufacturers. We cross over even into the beverage industry, and we have a subsidiary company called Western Malt Distributors, and Western Malt distributes specialty malt and pale two-row malt from Prairie Malt and bigger to microbreweries, brew pubs, and distilleries across the province. And that's a growing industry. I was talking to an executive in the malt industry, and he was telling me that there's 4,200 craft breweries in North America, and a new one opening up every 8 hours.
So when we were talking earlier, and looking at some of the products here, one of the common things that kept popping up was this purple wheat. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the purple wheat and what that is and how
Sure.
you developed that. And
Yeah, it's an interesting story. It goes back to about 1995, again with the Saskatchewan wheat pool. And they had a wheat breeder who was interested in developing a wheat for the fuel alcohol industry. And wheat being fairly highly regulated in Canada at the time, he was told you could do that, but you have to make it visually identifiable. So he found some genetics and crossed them into high-yielding, lower-protein wheat, but the genetics put in an anthocyanin pigmentation into the
You're
outside.
losing Jason right now.
I just call it the purple color.
I thought we'd just start talking about the purple vodka here right away.
Long story. But,
Kind of my thing.
The purple color is actually the presence of a certain type of anthocyanin, the same that you find in fruits like blueberries, Saskatoon berries, but we have it in wheat, and so a healthier wheat. And this product has moved through, various stages, in product development, and often our best success comes from the development of product prototypes. And one of the product prototypes at the front here is actually an Asian noodle made with purple wheat. And we made the prototype and shipped it to a manufacturer, and they liked the idea of actually having antioxidants in their noodles. And on their label, they put a statement of fact. They tell you how much antioxidant capacity and what the levels are. So they're not really claiming health benefit, but they're making it by association. So along that association, we're all interested in the occasional beverage. And we decided to make an alcoholic beverage with the help of the POS pilot plant from the purple wheat. And it's a product of extraction, not of distillation. But what it results in is a product that 1 ounce of purple wheat vodka is equivalent to about 250 grams of blueberries.
Perfect.
Jason's smoothies are never going to be the same.
Now my cereal doesn't have milk anymore with blueberries. It has purple wheat vodka. I like it. That's healthy.
Yeah, we contract grow it with farmers, and we have a sort of a closed production loop for it, and have exported the product to the United Kingdom, and more recently actually to Australia, where it's kind of like taking coals to Newcastle for a Saskatchewan company to export wheat to Australia.
So you said this is a prototype, so it's not in production in Canada? Or no?
Not yet. We're hoping that somebody will bring it forward.
I heard some aww.
We did the business planning, and actually I had some students from the U of S go to a case competition and present the marketing plan for it. And you can work really hard and succeed, but in the end you only make about $1 a bottle. So not a really high margin activity.
And so nobody else has the purple wheat thing going on. You guys, you're the only ones.
We hear a little bit every once in a while from New Zealand, and a little bit from Austria from time to time.
Beware of the New Zealand purple wheat. It's not real. So, Mark, you've also served on a number of boards. I know that you mentioned that in talking earlier. Can you just talk about some of the boards you've served on and those experiences?
It's been great being in the local business community. I was an early board member at the Saskatchewan Trade and Export Partnership. Gained a lot of good friends there, and in 2000 they awarded us their Exporter of the Year award, which was really nice. And I think it was recognition, not so much in terms of the actual volume of dollars or volume of product, but it was actually the value added that we were creating in Saskatchewan agriculture that brought that recognition. I've been on the board of Ag West Bio, the food center, POS pilot plant, POS Biosciences, as well as the Canadian Agricultural Marketing Council, CAMC. I'm currently on the board of the Food Processors Human Resource Development Council, which is a national board involved with the training of food workers. And I'm on the board of the Agricultural Development Fund as well, which is a granting agency for agricultural research and development.
Wow, that seemed like 75 to me. I wasn't keeping track. That's a lot.
So giving your time is obviously important for the work that you contribute on the boards, but also I think it'd be great to share with everybody the Friendship Soup story. If you could touch on that, which is this product right here.
Absolutely. At one point in our business, we were involved with the provision of food aid to West Africa, and it was a pre-cooked wheat. And you know, it came to us at a real critical time. We needed the volume, and we sought the business. And one of the things that we recognized is you can help people with your business. And we looked more locally, and we saw the Friendship Inn. And at that time, you know, doing about 180,000 meals a year, and soup being a fairly regular item on the menu. So we developed a soup mix, and it became sort of apparent to us that people needed, you know, healthy, nutritious food. And I recall the day it was launched at the Friendship Inn. It was December 13th, auspicious day, my birthday. And I went to the Friendship Inn, and they were serving the soup. And there was a gentleman there, shiny parka, kind of an urban recycler, and kind of a beard, and you know, could tell he was sort of feeling cold, and he got over top of that bowl of soup and he started cranking it in. Didn't really stop till he was done, and I asked him how was the soup, and he said it's going to stick with me all day. A lot better than the white bread and donuts that are on the table. So that kind of convinced us we could do a little bit more. So we decided that they need money as well. So we decided to put the Friendship Inn, or the Friendship Soup Mix, into a package and sell it. And so we sell it at one store, the Saskatoon Marketplace, and then we take the proceeds that we get from the sale of the soup and we turn it back to the Friendship Inn. And more recently, in recognition of our Filipino worker employees that we have, we turned over some money for typhoon relief in the Philippines in 2014.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I like telling the story because you know, businesses exist more than just to make money. It's what you do with your business that's really important. And you know, I tell the story when I'm traveling internationally as well. And I told it to a prospect in Mexico, and he says, you know, we have a lot of poor people here in Mexico that need something in their stomach, and he bought a couple of tons as well.
A couple of tons, yeah.
Wow, so I assume you do a lot of travel through work, and you probably have some interesting stories about some of your travels over the years.
Well, you know, I'm soon headed off to Southeast Asia to the Food and Hotel Restaurant, or Food and Hotel Asia show in Singapore. But I was there 2 years ago, and at the invitation of the ambassador to Indonesia, who's actually from Saskatchewan, Ambassador Boviash, he held an official dinner at the official residence for InfraReady and Spectrum Ingredients. And you know, it's the white glove service, you know, and the fine cutlery. And he proceeded to interview me for about an hour in front of all these Indonesian cereal and food business people. And you know, it was sort of the power of the Saskatchewan connection in business that is always surprising. And you know, you find that no business is a success by themselves. It's the inside team, and it's also the outside team. And you know, the caliber, depth, and breadth of the relationships that InfraReady holds is really, really powerful to us.
And how large is your team, speaking of that?
The team is 23 currently, and we're located on Fletcher Road in the Southwest Industrial area, which I think is destined to become sort of a food hub. We're across from Maple Leaf, and soon we'll have the new food processing and development center in the neighborhood as well. So it's a nice situation for us.
So growing your team from 3 employees originally to the number that it is today, what's been some lessons you've learned along the way about building your team?
Well, you know, I think teams are really motivated by plans. And we put a lot of time into directional planning. Every year we produce a one-page strategic plan, which we call our destination postcard. You know, it's what we're going to do to get to where we want to go. And when we have that plan in place, and when we have an opportunity to review our key business indicators on a quarterly basis, you sense that everybody's behind those objectives, and we're kind of moving together all at once and you know, collectively.
So since '94, when it started, what would you say would be your biggest obstacle to get around, and how did you get around it, and how did you become better because of that?
Well, I think there was certainly the crossroads of buying the business in 1998. You know, overcoming the financial hurdle of doing that. You know, that's probably the biggest obstacle for an entrepreneur. You know, is not the lack of vision or having goals, but it's sometimes the lack of resources that you have to execute on them. And I was fortunate in that I was able to procure the resources we needed to move forward. And I've always been, you know, fortunate in being able to, you know, for the next stage of growth, we need to do this, and this is how we're going to try to get there. And, you know, I think, you know, for InfraReady, you know, it's more, you know, we're sort of a quietly confident organization. You know, if we set our minds to doing something, there's a high probability that we will.
I find it extremely interesting that, you know, a company here in Saskatoon is providing products for, you know, all of these that we see here in front of us, but probably others as well. And these are big nationally known and American companies. It's quite interesting, and that's a great success story for us here.
Oh, thank you. You know, we utilize about 60 different raw materials. So if you can imagine, you know, all kinds of ancient grains, pulses, you know, cereals and oilseeds, and we produce about 300 products for 100 customers, and we've exported to 5 continents. You know, really innovation is in our lifeblood. You know, our business success and vitality come from new ideas or solving business problems, you know, and that's really what gets us the business that we've got and the business that we hope to get in the future. You know, we have a very defined model for innovation, and I think if we can continue to differentiate our product offerings, we'll be around for a long time.